The void between stars holds secrets that civilizations spend millennia trying to unlock. In the year 2387, humanity had carved its name across 47 star systems, each colony a testament to their species' relentless drive to survive, to expand, to claim what the universe offered. But the universe, as humanity would soon learn, was not empty of those who had prior claims. He didn't know he was watching it for the last time. "Sir." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez, her tone carrying that particular weight that meant bad news traveled at light speed. "Priority transmission from the outer perimeter. Sensor array Delta 7 is silent." Thorne turned from the viewport, his weathered face reflecting years of decisions that had kept people alive. At 53, he had seen humanity's expansion from the inside, had watched colonies bloom and sometimes die. But New Geneva had always been different. Safe. Define silent, Commander. Complete communication blackout as of Euro 347 hours. No distress signal. No malfunction indicator. Just nothing. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. In the depths of space, nothing was more terrifying than silence. Machinery failed with sparks and alarms. Ships died screaming across radio frequencies. But when something simply stopped talking, "Deploy reconnaissance drone, full stealth package." Thorne's orders came sharp and clean, "and prep the Defiant for emergency launch." "Something tells me we're about to have visitors we didn't invite." 3 systems away, in the twisted metal corridors of a vessel that defied human understanding of physics, Fleet Commander Zexthal studied the holographic display with 4 eyes that had witnessed the fall of 17 species. The ship, if such a crude term could be applied to the organic-mechanical hybrid that served as his flagship, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of hunger and ancient purpose. "The prey species has detected our probe network," hissed his tactical coordinator, a creature whose name translated roughly to Death Singer in the old tongue. "Their defensive instincts remain predictably primitive." Jextel's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. In his 3 centuries of existence, he had overseen the harvest of dozens of worlds, the systematic dismantling of civilizations that had grown too confident, too comfortable in their small corners of the galaxy. The humans were young, barely 400 years since their first stumbling steps beyond their birth system, but they had spread with a virulence that impressed even him. That made them dangerous. And the civilian population? Zex's silence stretched long enough for the ship to pulse 3 times, its heartbeat synchronized with his own. Standard harvest protocols. The young ones adapt well to re-education. The adults, his head tilted, considering, the adults remember too much. They make poor servants. Back on New Geneva, Dr. Amanda Cross bent over her research station in the xenobiology lab, unaware that her life's work unlocking the secrets of faster-than-light communication through quantum entanglement had been what drew the hunters to their world. Her latest breakthrough had sent ripples across subspace that older, more patient species had learned to recognize. The signature of a civilization ready for harvest. "Marcus." Her voice crackled through the comm system with barely contained excitement. "You need to see this. The quantum resonance patterns I've been tracking, they're not random. There's intelligence behind them, complex, organized intelligence." On the orbital station, Thorne felt ice crystallize in his chest. "Intelligence? You mean first contact?" "I mean something has been watching us, learning from us. The patterns suggest they've been monitoring our communications, our technology development, our expansion patterns, for years." The reconnaissance drone's data stream burst across Thorne's tactical display like a nightmare given digital form. Where sensor array Delta 7 should have been, only twisted metal remained, fused and melted in ways that suggested temperatures far beyond anything in humanity's arsenal. But it was the other shapes on the feed that made his blood freeze. Ships, dozens of them, sleek and predatory, arranged in perfect formation around New Geneva like antibodies surrounding an infection. Each one was easily twice the size of humanity's largest vessels, their hulls seeming to bend light around them in ways that made the eye water to look upon. "Get me Admiral Hayes," Thorne ordered, his voice steady despite the certainty that was settling in his bones. "Tell him the Solstice protocols are now in effect." The Solstice protocols. humanity's darkest contingency plan, developed by minds that understood their species' position in a universe full of unknown threats. When diplomacy failed, when retreat was impossible, when the only choice was between extinction and fighting with everything they had, when the monsters finally came knocking, Dr. Cross's quantum entanglement research had yielded one final terrible gift: a communication system that could operate instantaneously across any distance, immune to jamming, impossible to intercept. As the alien fleet moved into attack formation, that system carried a single desperate message across the void to a facility hidden in the asteroid belt of Solar System. Project Prometheus is go. Repeat. Prometheus is go. In the deepest, most classified levels of Titan Station, lights that had waited 20 years for this signal finally blazed to life. Admiral Catherine Hayes, architect of humanity's most secret defense, felt her heart skip as decades of preparation crystallized into a single moment of absolute clarity. The prototype had never been tested beyond simulations. Its crew had trained for a war they prayed would never come. Its weapons existed at the bleeding edge of human understanding, pushed beyond safe parameters by the simple acknowledgement that safety was a luxury species couldn't afford when facing extinction. But now, as alien ships prepared to rain fire on New Geneva's defenseless millions, humanity's most desperate gamble was about to face its first trial by fire. The UES Retribution began its awakening sequence, and in the vast emptiness between stars, something new was about to announce itself to the galaxy. Something that would teach the hunters what it meant to prey upon a species that had clawed its way up from the bottom of a gravity well on a world that killed the weak without mercy. Something that carried in its memory banks the accumulated fury of 10,000 years of human warfare refined and focused into a weapon that would burn bright enough to be seen across the galaxy. The alien ships moved into final attack position around New Geneva, confident in their superiority, secure in their ancient knowledge that young species fell quickly when separated from their home systems. They had no idea what was coming for them. The first attack came at dawn. New Geneva time. Jacques Stoul watched through his ship's sensor network as the bombardment began. Each pulse of coherent energy calculated to disable rather than destroy. The harvest required infrastructure intact, populations manageable. His species had perfected this dance across millennia. The precise application of force that broke a civilization's will without rendering the spoils worthless. Below, in the administrative center of New Geneva's capital city, Emergency Coordinator James Holloway watched his world die in slow motion. The alien weapons didn't target population centers directly. Instead, they methodically dismantled the technological arteries that kept a modern colony alive. Power grids, communication networks, transportation hubs, orbital elevators. Within 6 hours, a thriving world of 12 million souls had been reduced to isolated pockets of frightened survivors, cut off from each other and from the stars. Status report, Holloway demanded, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around the emergency bunker. The man had survived the Martian uprising, had coordinated disaster relief across 7 systems, but nothing had prepared him for this: the systematic vivisection of everything he had helped build. Orbital platforms 1 through 4 are dark, reported Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, her hands dancing across backup communication systems that were failing as fast as she could activate them. The Meridian and New Hope managed emergency jumps before the attack, but their crews estimate 40% casualties from the precipitous departure. 40% casualties from their own evacuation procedures. The aliens weren't just attacking, they were forcing humanity to wound itself in its desperation to survive. Captain Thorne's voice crackled through the emergency channel, transmitted from one of the few remaining orbital installations. James, we've got maybe 12 hours before they complete whatever they're doing up here. Our defensive grid is holding, barely. But they're not trying to destroy us. They're hurting us. Hurting us toward what? The answer came not in words, but in the form of massive objects descending through New Geneva's atmosphere. Geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Their surfaces shifting between dimensions in ways that made human vision simply refuse to process them properly. Landing craft, if such a term could apply to vessels that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Dr. Cross, working frantically in her underground laboratory, felt the quantum resonance patterns shift as the alien ships established some kind of field around the planet. They're creating a containment grid, she transmitted to anyone still listening. Whatever technology they're using, it's isolating us from the rest of the galaxy. No communications in or out. No ships. We're completely cut off. But she was wrong. 23 light-years away, racing through hyperspace at velocities that strained the boundaries of known physics. The UES Retribution tore through the void like humanity's own personal apocalypse given form. Commander David Kane stood on the bridge of humanity's first true warship, watching stellar navigation displays track their impossible journey. The Retribution was more than a vessel. It was a statement written in exotic matter and crystallized rage, proclaiming that humanity would not go gently into extinction. "ETA to New Geneva system?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of command that came from knowing every decision might be your last. 17 hours, 43 minutes at current velocity, replied Navigation Officer Park. But sir, the hyperspace distortions around the target system are unlike anything in our databases. Whatever the aliens are doing, they're warping space-time itself. Kane nodded grimly. The Retribution had been designed to fight wars humanity couldn't win through conventional means. Its prototype weapons systems drew power from sources that made conventional fusion reactors look like children's toys. Its armor incorporated materials that existed in a state of controlled quantum uncertainty. Its crew had trained in scenarios that pushed human psychology to its absolute limits. But none of that preparation had included fighting an enemy that could alter the fundamental structure of reality. On New Geneva, the ground assault began with a precision that was almost artistic in its cruelty. The alien soldiers, if such a term applied to beings that seemed to flow more than walk, whose forms shifted based on tactical requirements, emerged from their impossible craft with movements that spoke of predatory intelligence refined across eons. They didn't attack military installations first, or government centers. They went straight for the schools. Emergency Coordinator Holloway felt something break inside him as the reports came in. Not the children. Any military target, any strategic location, any symbol of human authority, but not the children. They want them alive, Dr. Cross transmitted, her voice hollow with the understanding that came from monitoring the alien communication patterns. The children, they're not killing them, they're taking them. The terrible logic became clear as more reports filtered in. Adults who resisted were eliminated with clinical efficiency. Adults who surrendered were processed through some kind of screening procedure, sorted like inventory. But the children, all of them, regardless of age or circumstance, were simply collected. Collected like resources. Captain Thorne made the call that would define the rest of his life. With his orbital station surrounded and his defensive options dwindling, he opened a channel to the alien fleet. The response came in perfect, unaccented English. "Human Commander, I am Fleet Commander Jexthul of the Harvester Collective. Your resistance has been noted and found adequate for our purposes. You will surrender your military assets and submit to processing. Your compliance will be rewarded with survival. And if we refuse?" Thorne asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then your children will still serve our purposes, but your species will provide no further contributions to the galaxy." A pause, filled with harmonics that suggested vast amusement. "We have harvested 47 civilizations, Human Commander. Your defiance is not unique, neither will be your defeat." It was then that the quantum entanglement communicator in Dr. Cross's lab received its first incoming transmission in 26 hours. A message from the void beyond the alien containment field, broadcast on frequencies that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their technology. "New Geneva, this is UES Retribution. We are inbound. Hold the line." Shexta felt his ship's organic sensors convey something unprecedented. A disturbance in hyperspace that registered as actively hostile to his species' technology. In 3 centuries of conquest he had never encountered anything like it. The signature was aggressive, predatory, familiar. "Fleet Commander," his tactical coordinator hissed, mandibles clicking with what might have been concern. "The hyperspace distortion approaching this system, it carries the resonance patterns of a hunter-killer construct. Impossible. This species has existed for barely 4 centuries. They lack the sophistication." The transmission that cut across all frequencies piercing their containment field as if it were made of paper, carried a voice that spoke with the accumulated authority of a species that had never learned to submit. Zextul's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display as sensors finally managed to resolve the approaching vessel. What they showed him violated everything his species understood about technological development curves, about the progression from primitive chemical rockets to true interstellar capability. The human ship was massive, 3 kilometers of angular destruction that seemed to bend space around itself through sheer malevolent intent. But more than its size, more than its obvious military purpose, was the simple fact that it existed at all. Young species didn't build dreadnoughts. They built explorers, colony ships, cargo haulers. They didn't leap from fusion drives to whatever unholy propulsion system was pushing that abomination toward his fleet. Fleet commander. The question carried undertones of fear that Zextul had never heard from his tactical coordinator before. On New Geneva, Emergency Coordinator Holloway received a transmission that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. The voice was calm, professional, absolutely certain. New Geneva Ground Control. This is Retribution. In 27 minutes we will begin fire missions against the alien fleet. All civilian populations should take cover in the deepest available shelters. What we're about to do, the shockwaves will be felt on the surface. The alien containment field, which had isolated New Geneva from the galaxy for 36 hours, suddenly flickered and died as something tore through it like tissue paper. Above the planet, Fleet Commander Zextul made the decision that sealed his fate and announced to the galaxy that humanity was no longer prey. He opened fire on the UES Retribution. The first exchange of fire between the alien fleet and humanity's prototype dreadnought lasted exactly 47 seconds. The UES Retribution emerged from the alien barrage without a single hull breach. Commander Kane studied the tactical display with the cold satisfaction of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Damage report. Shields at 87%, replied his tactical officer. "Hull integrity 100%. The alien weapons, they're designed to disable rather than destroy. They weren't expecting resistance." Kane's smile held no warmth whatsoever. "Then let's educate them about the dangers of underestimating a Deathworld species. Target their command vessel. Maximum yield." Zextul's flagship, a marvel of biological engineering that had survived conflicts across 3 galaxies, simply ceased to exist. The fleet commander himself, protected by emergency stasis protocols, found himself aboard one of his remaining vessels, staring at sensor readings that made no sense according to everything his species had learned about warfare. "How?" he whispered, his voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. "How does a civilization 4 centuries old possess weapons that predate our own stellar emergence?" The answer lay in humanity's unique approach to technological development. A species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other had simply applied those same principles to the stars. While other civilizations developed gradually, humanity had leaped forward through pure necessity, driven by the understanding that the universe was full of things stronger, older, and more experienced. They had built the Retribution not as an exploration vessel or diplomatic courier, but as a message to the galaxy. "Touch us, and we will burn your civilization to its foundations." On New Geneva's surface, Dr. Amanda Cross watched through the facility's sensors as impossible energies painted aurora across the planet's atmosphere. The quantum resonance patterns she had spent her life studying were being rewritten in real time as the human weapon systems operated beyond the boundaries of known physics. "Emergency Coordinator Holloway," she transmitted, her voice barely steady. "The alien ground forces are withdrawing to their landing craft. Whatever that ship is doing up there, it's terrifying them." She was right. Across New Geneva, the Harvester Collective's ground forces were abandoning their positions with a haste that bordered on panic. The carefully orchestrated harvest protocol that had worked flawlessly across dozens of worlds was collapsing as reports filtered down from orbit. The prey species had somehow acquired weapons of mass stellar destruction. The children they had collected were abandoned in staging areas as the aliens fled toward their landing craft. The processing facilities they had constructed were left running, their biomechanical systems continuing to sort and catalog human prisoners even as their operators fled toward orbit. But it was too late. The UES Retribution had not come alone. As Rexstathl's remaining ships attempted to organize a retreat, hyperspace itself began to buckle and tear around New Geneva. 3 more vessels, smaller than the Retribution but no less deadly, materialized from the void like vengeful spirits given steel form. The UES Fury, the UES Vindication, the UES Nemesis. Humanity's prototype fleet, kept secret for 20 years, finally revealed itself to a galaxy that had never imagined such fury could emerge from a single world. Commander Kane opened a channel to the fleeing alien vessels, his voice carrying across the void with the weight of absolute certainty. Fleet Commander Rexstathl, your surrender is no longer acceptable. You came to harvest our children. Now you will answer for that mistake. The battle that followed lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, the Harvester Collective's 43rd Fleet existed only as debris scattered across New Geneva's orbital space. Their bioships, marvels of organic technology that had conquered civilizations across the galaxy, had been systematically dismantled by weapons that treated their exotic hulls as nothing more than obstacles to be removed. But the Retribution was not finished. As the last alien vessel died in fire and vacuum, Kane's ship began broadcasting a message on frequencies that would carry it to every corner of the galaxy. The transmission was simple, direct, and absolutely unambiguous. To any species monitoring this frequency, the planet New Geneva and all human colonies are under the protection of the United Earth Fleet. Any hostile action against human civilians will be met with total annihilation. We are humanity, we do not forgive. We do not forget, and we do not show mercy to those who threaten our children. The message included the complete tactical data from the engagement sensor recordings of human weapons reducing supposedly invincible alien ships to their component atoms, technical specifications that would send every military analyst in the galaxy into panic, and most importantly, the location coordinates of 73 other human colonies. A dare, a challenge, a promise. Come for us, the message said, without words. See what happens. On New Geneva, Emergency Coordinator Holloway stood in the ruins of the planetary capital, watching as rescue shuttles from the human fleet descended to collect the children who had been abandoned by their would-be captors. The alien biomechanical facilities were already being studied by teams of engineers who spoke in excited whispers about technological advances that would leapfrog humanity centuries ahead of their previous development curve. Dr. Cross found him there, staring up at the stars where the Retribution maintained its vigil. "How many more are there?" she asked, quietly. "Ships like that one." Holloway's smile was thin and sharp as a blade. "Enough," he said simply. "More than enough." In the deepest archives of the Galactic Confederation, stored in data crystals that had existed since before most species had discovered fire, new files were being created. The humans had been catalogued as a Class 7 civilization, young, primitive, suitable for monitoring but not direct intervention. Those files were being updated. Class 1. Apex predator species. Extreme xenocidal tendencies. Technological development rates that violate all known paradigms. Do not engage under any circumstances. Across the galaxy, species that had grown comfortable in their ancient hierarchies began to reassess their understanding of the universe. The humans had not simply defended themselves. They had sent a message that would echo across the stars for millennia. They had announced their presence not as supplicants seeking a place among the civilized species, but as conquerors who had simply been waiting for someone to give them an excuse. The UES Retribution departed New Geneva System 3 days later, its mission complete. But before it vanished back into the void, Commander Kane transmitted one final message to the surface. "New Geneva, this is Retribution. Your system is secure. The threat has been eliminated. Remember this day not as the day you were attacked, but as the day humanity stopped being prey." In the years that followed, the Battle of New Geneva would be studied by military academies across 100 worlds. It would inspire fear in the hearts of species that had never known defeat. It would serve as humanity's introduction to galactic politics, written in fire across the void, signed with the ashes of those who had mistaken them for prey. But most importantly, it would serve as a reminder that in a universe full of ancient evils and patient predators, there was now something new hunting in the darkness between stars. Something that remembered every slight, every threat, every act of aggression against the innocent. Something that called itself human. and God help anyone who gave them a reason to act on that memory.